Welcome to Atomic Day's audiobook. Sit back and relax as you listen to the first chapter of the book A Weakness Called Love, The Mamers of an African Housemaid, written by Glamty and narrated by Atomic Day. Chapter 7. He then made his way to where I was sitting. Shetu was still not back. He casually said, "Hello, where's Shetu?" For the first time in forever, he looked at me. He did not just glance or sneered. No, he looked at me like I was a human being. My heart stopped. I did not know what to feel. My throat was dry and my lips short of words. I could not bring myself to say as much as an I was under his spell. My brain was saying, "Answer him, you dimwit," but my voice betrayed me. My confidence melted away. What's this? This must be what love feels like. I'm sure of it. He says again, "Where is Shetu?" Still I did not answer. He did not ask again. He stood there waiting for me to answer. But how could I, when his heavily mesmerizing eyes were piercing into me? After an internal battle of emotions, I stammered in a faint voice, Shetu came and she. Before I could embarrass myself any further, Shetu answered from nowhere, "Yaya Mudi, what are you doing here?" I just sat there smiling, looking at him. "There you are," he said, turning to Shetu. "I was just asking your friend your whereabout." They talked for a while and he walked away. All this while, my gaze was fixated on him. Then I felt a little sad because I had not gotten enough of his view. But once I recovered, an overwhelming euphoric feeling resurfaced. I was so in there. As soon as he left, Shetu said, "Next time, laddie, you can use words. Remember, you are not mute. You are blessed with a voice for a reason. I'm sure being mute is not part of it." "You looked like a dumb idiot," she hissed. "Sorry," I said. We were a step closer to our goal. He had noticed me. That night, I lay beside my sister on our bare yellow mattress as I envisaged our future. Moody and I's magical future together. Smiling, I closed my eyes as I calmly let sleep overtake me. The next morning, I woke up extremely happy. I even offered to help my mother with chores. I was singing love songs while I work. I had a day left before I leave for town. I had to see Moody before I leave. I had a plan. I bathed and took out one of my best clothes. I was in the mood for makeup. I have heard from Shetu that makeup accentuates my beauty. Since my body is not exactly the best, I decided to enhance my face. I draw a very dark line just above my eyebrow with my kohl. It was perfect. Then I put on my red lipstick. I did not bother to wear a hijab today. I wore a veil instead. I hurriedly went to Shetu's house. When I met Shetu, I told her I had a sudden urge of seeing Moody. I told her we were going to take drinking water to him, since he's already in the farm. Rain had started to fall. Preparations for planting were being made. "That's bold," she replied. "I know, but since I'm going to town the next day, I don't have much time. See," I said with a grin as I showed her an old soda bottle that I filled with cold water from our clay pot. I waited for Shetu to get ready as I mentally tried to compose a dialogue for me and Moody. In 20 minutes, she was ready and we were on our way to his farm. He was shirtless. His shirt was carefully laid on a shrub. His long trousers was folded up to his knee. He bent down, plowing the soil, his broad shoulders accentuating his well-sculpted muscles that flex as he plows the land. He oozes of an effortless charm. I could not take my eyes off of him. He then stood up and wipes the sweat off his face, still unaware of the eyes that were ogling him. He stood up and stretched. As he stretched, his eyes met ours. I felt butterflies in my stomach and then he smirked. He walked aesthetically towards us. I unconsciously tightened my grip on the water bottle I was holding, my eyes never leaving his beautiful body. When he came, he put his right leg on top of a stone. Both his hands were on his hips and he said, "Hi," I answered before Shetu. "Sanada Aiki." "Well done," I said. "It's a sunny day. I thought you would be thirsty. Here, I brought you water." I handed him the bottle. He smiled amusedly and said, "Thank you, laddie." He called my name. I could not believe it. Even the way my name glides through his tongue was smooth and soft. It sounded like soothing music. My name sounded perfect in his mouth. And then he took the bottle. His manly, calloused hands grazed mine in the process. I felt chills down my spine. He uncapped the bottle and drank. I folded my hands on my chest as I rocked my body from side to side, smiling while he watched me. Shetu was standing there. She was impressed and did not want to interrupt. I was finally bugging Moody. Then I said, "We better go. Let us let the hardworking man do his job." I turned my face away giggling. Shetu said, "Yaya Moody, please greet my sister Hafsat." With that, she pulled me as we walked away. I looked at him one more time, smiled and quickly turned away laughing. The next day was the day for our journey. We assembled in Halimatu's house. Halimatu came out and gave us the lecture. I've heard it 1,000 times. Be good girls, work hard, do as you are told, don't touch the kids, don't steal, blah blah blah. I wasn't even listening to her anymore. Then I spotted a newbie who was listening to her attentively. Halimatu had gotten a young girl of 9. It was her first time going to the town. She clumsily held a head tie which was carefully tied to hold her clothes. I looked at her. Amateur, I thought. All of us had our clothes in a leather bag except for her. Let's just say we had class. When Halimatu had finished blabbing about righteousness, she said, "Your parents had all given me your transport fares except for Shatu. Where is yours?" "Here," she said, giving her the money. Halimatu put it in her paper bag. Then she said, "Let's go." Now we are 7, including Halimatu. Our town had no marked roads, and as such, it was impossible for buses to go in. We had to take motorcycles to take us out of town. The outer part of our town were mainly farms, but our car park is located there. We boarded motorcycles, 3 people on a bike including the rider, except for Halimatu, who was the only passenger on a bike. We made it to the park. We all followed Halimatu with determination. There were buses lined up. At the sides there were men selling earrings, bread and other stuff. All were wailing on top of their voices, but they were saying different things at the same time. "Kano, Kano," one man shouted. "Ranu, Ranu," shouted another. Various towns were being called, while others were shouting, "Brady, Brady." On another corner, there was a man shouting in a loudspeaker. He was selling herbal medicine. He had a cure for all ailments. He shouts praises of his cure eloquently. He even dared anyone who tries it and did not see favorable results to shave his beard. The sight was an utter chaos. We made it to the bus for Kanu. Halimatu instructed us to enter while she talks to the bus conductor. The newbie sat beside me, while Shatu was on my other side. We were now waiting for other passengers. The bus had to be full before we start our journey. The bus became full and our journey finally started. "Goodbye, dear Moody," I whispered to myself. We were on the road for about 45 minutes when we finally reached the town's bus station. The town's bus station was bigger, rowdier, and had a lot of people. They even dressed differently. The men had different hairstyles. While some shaved part of their head and leave the other parts unshaved, others left theirs unkempt, allowing it to grow into a bushy forest. One could swear they never knew what a razor was. Some men even wear tight trousers that stopped at their ankles. They smoked cigarette freely. There were girls selling food also. A nostalgic smile hijacked my face. One of the girls sat on an 8-foot wall made from bricks. It was a building that was clearly abandoned. She was talking in a high pitch. She let her slipper slip off her feet and fell to the ground. A man that was standing beside her quickly ran and got it for her, but the girl did not collect the shoe. Instead, she let him put the shoe back on her feet. Town people were vulgar. They talk anyhow, but they have very pretty ladies, I must say. All the ladies were fair except for their feet and their healed burned fingers. The newbie asked me, "Is there a monster that burned people's hand?" "No," I said. "It's the food they eat. It makes their hands look that way." Larry saw a worried expression on the girl's face. She quickly interjected, "Don't worry, they don't give us the same food they eat. They eat canned fish and juices." "Oh," she said with relief. "But how is a fish canned?" "Town people are full of wonders," she exclaimed. Indeed, the town is a mysterious place. The females even wear trousers. Though I disapprove of such crude behavior, I don't understand why a woman would wear something that is the exclusive preserve of men. The worst part was they don't even look nice. Why defy the rules when you still look like a giant sack of sweet potatoes? It makes no sense to me. Nothing in town makes sense. We found a tricycle and all 7 boarded it. We finally reached our destination, the house of Haji Akulu. Haji Akulu was the dealer. She was the woman who all the town folk came to for young housemaids. Halimatu supplies the girls. Haji Akulu's house was not big. It had 3 rooms and a pit latrine toilet. Haji Akulu occupies a room and rents the 3rd room to a man. The man lives with his wife and 3 children. The last room was occupied by another man with his wife and 2 children. All share the same toilet. The toilet had a constant queue, especially during the time of prayer when all want to use it. The rooms were adjacent to one another. There was a little space by the side. Each woman cooks in front of her room. The toilet had been demarcated into 2. One holds a pit latrine, the other was cemented and had a water passage that leads to a gutter outside the house. This was the bathroom. It was reserved for baths only. We all slept on a mat in Haji Akulu's room. When it was hot, we came outside the rooms and slept there. Haji Akulu is a wealthy woman. It is said she has another house apart from the one she currently lives in. She was a maid in Saudi Arabia, but she was there illegally and had never gotten a residence permit. She eventually got caught and was deported. Illegal immigrants go about with their money tucked in a short sneaker that had pockets, which is worn as an undergarment, so that if they were caught, they can escape with their cash. It is said that illegal immigrants were not given the opportunity to go back home and pack. Once you're caught, you get deported. Haji Akulu was lucky to escape with her money, so when she got back, she bought 2 houses and leases them. Apart from Haji Akulu, there was Hajia Wali, who was an old lady of almost 70 years. She is also a dealer, but Halimatu decided we were going to Haji Akulu this time. She welcomed us, we all greeted her, then we got out and waited outside. We met 2 other girls from our village, Zulay and Samira. I was surprised they were still at Haji Akulu's residence. Maybe she had not found a house for them yet. Halimatu was conversing with her. I listened to them attentively. We were right outside the room. I can hear Haji Akulu telling Halimatu about a new place they found. A place that the demand for girls was high and they pay lavishly. I heard the name of the place, but I don't know where it is. It is the first time I heard the place, and from all indications the place was far. Halimatu called us. While Haji Akulu examined us, she pointed at Azima, Zulay and Samira and said they will do. She pointed at Shatu and said, if there is need, we can always add this one. Haji Akulu went back to her room. Halimatu called us all to explain things to us. She began, there has been a slight change of plan. A new town want girls. They pay lavishly. They feed and treat girls well. According to what I've heard, when you are about to marry, they give you an additional money apart from your wages. This is a great opportunity. It seems it is our lucky day, but you will have to take a 12-hour journey by bus in the night. It shall be worth it. She smiled. 3 girls will first go, the others will follow later, she concluded. I will not go to that place. I can't even pronounce the place. It was never part of the plan. It was agreed that I will stay in Kano. I stay in Kano or I go home, I said. Halimatu copied what I said in a mocking, sarcastic voice. I'm sure that is not what I sound like. If I sounded like anything close to what she sounds like, I'll be in serious need of a divine intervention. She sounded like a retarded seal. She then said, very well, some people are their own enemies of progress. You can take a ship to the water, but you cannot force it to drink. Is there anyone who does not want to go far also? She asked. I looked at Shadru and Hajara. I wanted them to say no as well, but they were silent. They were weighing their options. I nudged Shadru, she said. I would like to stay in Kano as well. Hajara did not speak. She looked at the ground and fiddled with the edge of her veil. She wanted to go. The traitor wanted to go. We were interrupted by a salam. Halimatu answered. A woman in her mid-30s came inside. Halimatu greeted her. She answered haughtily. She entered Haji Akulu's room. After a while, they both came out. She examined us all. Then she pointed at Hajara and said, this one. With that, she went back to the room. Haji Akulu then said, get ready. You are living with this woman. Halimatu gave her another long lecture about being dutiful and obedient. The woman went out and Hajara followed suit. Then Halimatu was ready to leave. She called us and wished us well. She continued, I will come back in the next 3 months to check on you. If you do not like where you are taken, I will take you back home. God bless you, my girls. Take care of yourselves. Be patient at all times. Remember, a patient person can make soup with stones and water and eat from it. Goodbye. It was sad watching Halimatu leave, but as twisted as that may sound, her presence breathed safely. She may be a pain, but she was our confidante. She may be annoying, but still we like her most times. In this town, she is the closest thing we have to a relative. She reminds us of home. The trip to the new town was going to be tomorrow. Another woman will take them there. She will also get her caught. The newbie was going to be a babysitter for another woman. I was taken to yet another house, the house of the great Malama Ara Ayat. We have come to the end of today's chapter. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Khadija Nasser and at Atomic D on Twitter, and subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channels at Atomic D. And also don't forget to hit the notification button so that you will be informed whenever I post a new chapter. Thank you for listening and bye ta. Love ya.